Hello and welcome to Low Carb Conversations. I'm your host, Leah Williamson. We're without Holly this week, but she'll be back on soon, so don't worry. We've got a great guest today. I'm really excited, so we're just going to get straight into it today. We have Dr. Louann Brizendine. She is a neuropsychiatrist. She founded the Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic at UCSF. Dr. Louann is a New York Times bestseller, and her first book, The Female Brain, and the follow-up, The Male Brain, books that many people know a lot about. And so we're excited to talk about her new book, which is called The Upgrade: How the Female Brain Gets Stronger and Better in Midlife and Beyond. Welcome, Dr. Louann.
Thanks for having me. It's so fun. I just got my little box. I'm the first one to get them on the block, so I got my little book. I'm hugging it today because the boxes just came.
I love a hard copy book as well. Just you clapping it there. If people are not watching the video, Dr. Louann was holding up the book, and it's just that fresh book look, isn't it?
Yeah, I just like to pat it a little bit because it has a really nice turquoise cover, and like pet it a little bit, and they did a really nice job. You know, they have these great artists that do such a nice job.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to talk about what The Upgrade is and more about the book. But first, let's introduce yourself to our listeners who might not have know you or heard of you before. So let's talk a little bit about you and how you got interested into writing The Upgrade in your books.
So I am an MD. I'm a doctor, and I trained in medicine and neurobiology and psychiatry. So I've practiced for about almost 30 years, and most of that time at UCSF in San Francisco. But before that, I was at Yale and Harvard doing my studies and doing my residency, and my first job was in Boston. So I covered the whole country. And the reason I got interested, actually, Leah, in all of this issue about hormones in the brain, and it's because in my undergraduate years at Berkeley, it was during the feminist movement, and I was really, I was interested in behavior. Like, what 20-year-old isn't interested in behavior? Do you know what I mean? And so it was fascinating to get into being able to study the actual behavioral effects of hormones in the brain. And it was always surprising to me because the brain is actually, the whole purpose of a hormone is to get into having you have a behavior. If you're hungry, right, the hunger hormones come out and it makes you hungry and starved and you go to eat. The sex hormones come arising and you're looking for a sexual partner, you're wanting sex. So it was sort of a revelation that hormones cause a behavior.
Yeah, I love that. I think I might have been looking at your Instagram, which I'm loving all your reels and your little tidbits of information. So everyone should jump on over there and have a look if they're interested in learning a little bit more. But I love how it just makes sense when you say that the hormones just play that different that role for each thing that it does. So I really love that. I think there was one on there that's really good. That's like the 5 tips or something like that. So we'll link up your Instagram for everybody as well.
Oh yeah, come join me. I try to do a new tip every couple of days, and it's fun because it just I get to focus in on 30-second kind of something that's a real juicy little tidbit.
Yeah, that's really great. And so, so you're at your clinic and you saw lots of thousands and thousands of women and your own experience. And this has prompted you to write your new book, The Upgrade: How the Female Brain Gets Stronger and Better in Midlife and Beyond. I might just read the little blurb about the book because it's so interesting. It contains guidance for navigating perimenopausal and menopausal stages and actionable science-backed steps for preserving brain health for the rest of your life. The Upgrade is a stunning roadmap to a new brain state and its incredible possibilities, and an entirely new and radically positive understanding of aging. So I've started reading the book. I'm just like, I was just saying, like, I'm in bed reading. I keep getting so excited instead of winding down for bed because I turn around to my husband and I'm like, did you know this? Did you know this? And he's like, calm down, Leah. So can you tell us a little bit about the meaning behind the book's title and tell us a bit more about it?
Well, so, I had written the book, The Female Brain, and it's from the moment of conception up until you kind of hit the second half of life. Because that was also all I felt legitimacy and authenticity to write about at that time, because hadn't gone this extra road past the transition, perimenopause, menopause. So the whole reason that I wrote the second book is because I had so many women over the years in my clinic, in the perimenopause and menopause. And remember, I don't call them that in the book for certain reasons. We can talk about that. I call it the transition and the upgrade, because perimenopause and menopause are really just kind of fossil words that the pharmaceutical industry decided to slap on women, and it's not really anything about our real experience in our process. So I decided to write this because I wanted women to have basically an owner's manual for the second half of our life. And I felt like it's really actually an upgrade, which is very exciting. And I felt like it's just like all the media, everything makes it look like, oh, it's just a downgrade, and you're just going to be, it's just aging, and you're just going to fall apart. Things get worse from the time you're 35 on. Well, au contraire, that is just not how it goes. We're really lucky to end up having the second half of life without all of those fluctuating hormones, and our brain is just going to get better.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about, the upgrade, the transition. Tell us a little bit about those names that you're using.
So the transition, so the transition is basically late 30s up until like age 51. So that whole chunk of maybe 12 years. And the pre transition is 37, 38 up to about 41, 42. Then that early transition years is 41 to about 44, 45. The middle is like 45 to 47, 48, 49. Then the final part of the transition is the couple of years right before you stop your period. So, and I call once you're done with the transition, you get to go into the upgrade, aka menopause. And then, menopause only lasts for one day, because it's the day that you have a year without any blood flow. So boom, you're into what we call postmenopause, but I call that the upgrade. So I changed the language around because I feel like it's just important to call it by different words, because it allows us to grow into the fullness of our authenticity and the fullness of actually being better. And all of the studies, even though it's fully surprising, each decade of our life we get happier, which is surprising to most women. It's called the positivity effect, and researchers are even a little bit astounded by it. But each decade they looked at, all the way up to the 90s, we get happier.
Oh, that's really, well, I am surprised by that. I think that's great. And I love how, there's so much in the media. And as you can imagine, like I'm reading a lot of news articles all the time that are coming through to do with health, and menopause is never looked on in a nice way, in a way that should be celebrated for women, and the amazing things that are happening. So could you tell us about some of the great things that could happen to people during the upgrade, rather than focusing too much on some of the negative ones?
Well, some of the great things that end up happening is, we because we are not pulled and pushed and pulled and pushed, which I talk about in the book a lot, like that pushing and the waves that are redoing our brains 25% every month. We are actually getting to a place where we are actually more balanced and more serene. And basically all of the multitasking we're doing when we're younger starts to be like we get increased focus, because we get less anxious by multitasking and being jerked around by our hormones, which allows us to focus better. It allows you to tune into your internal self better. And basically you are able to have more authenticity and be more direct with people. I find that it's much easier to start being more direct and not being as much of a people pleaser and a perfectionist, which most of us were most of our lives, which drove us crazy. And also that hamster wheel of worry that goes round and round in our head about either what happened in the past, what's happening now, or what's happening in the future. We can actually, that the hamster wheel just is able to calm down. So those are the things you have to look forward to.
That sounds amazing. I'm going through my transition stage. I'm 44. So I've been reading the book and like, I think I'm like, I'm through the first part of it. I'm getting into the, middle to end part of it, I'd say. So I'm really enjoying reading some of these things that are coming up to look forward to, rather than me feeling like, I've just got all these stuff that's happening to me at the moment. So you've got some tips in there for women that are going through the transition phase. What's some things that, maybe I should be doing now to prepare myself ready for the upgrade?
So a lot of I don't want to make it sound all Pollyannish, because
Yep.
my own personal experience, and the reason people come to my clinic is because they're frigging miserable. Let's be
Yeah.
clear, right? It's like there is not, so you're at that stage, I mean, I don't know. It's hard. That's why I didn't put any ages to things,
Yeah.
because you know how it is. I'm sure you've watched, Leah, in your clinical work, is that, some women at 42, 43, like 7 or 8% are women are completely finished with the menopause. And then
Yeah.
some women, so the average age is somewhere between, like, 44, 45 and 51 or 2. So that's about 80 or 90% of women go through it then. But the things you can prepare for is that you got to have yourself, you have to give yourself some encouragement just to keep on swimming, keep on going forward, because it will get better. But there are all kinds of little tricks, and I'm sure you work with your clients all the time with this. They can be nutritional, and they can be sleep. Basically, sometimes you had to just start sleeping in a different bed than your husband because you're fighting over the cupboards, and he's hot, you're cold. So you have to make it so that you can really get deep sleep, whether you're having hot flashes or not. So give yourself permission, I would say, for women your age, Leah, give yourself permission to situate your life and what you're asked to do and not do, and the sleeping situation and your eating situation, in a way that you feel comfortable with yourself and can have a voice for saying what you actually do need.
Oh, I love that. That's it's so empowering, right? It's that, what you really do need, like tune into the body, start listening to it, because we do have so many external factors going on, especially in, this age, and in women's life in general. We have, maybe it's children, it's husbands, it's family life, it's work pressures, it's all the pressures that go with being a woman. And then we have the added hormones on top of that and everything else that's happening. So just finding what works for you and inside of all of that noise can be really empowering, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to be able to be, just also getting people used to around you, your loved ones and whatever, getting used to. I mean, I like the phrase. This is the phrase I would really give you to, like, write on your computer, Leah, because say say what you mean, but don't say it mean.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Say what you
And
mean, but don't say it mean. Yeah.
so it empowers you to feel like you can say what you need. You can put your needs out there. I think as moms and as spouses and whatever, we, of course, you, when you have little children, etc., you put their needs first. That's what we do as moms. That's what we do in our oxytocin and our estrogen. That's how I said that's how nature made us, to keep the next generation alive, right? And for us not to strangle our husbands, to keep it right. And I think that all of that stuff it's really it's that part of us is going to go into transition, and you're just kind of getting yourself permission. Give yourself permission to say what you need, and to say it clearly. You can say it mean, but don't say it mean.
Love that. I was handed a little card by someone. They gave it to me, and on the card it said, "When the change occurs, wisdom will come." And that reminded me of you talking about this and the changes that happen with the brain. So I thought that was quite interesting. So I took the changes, the upgrade. So when the change comes, the wisdom will. When the wisdom will come once a change occurs. So I took that as the upgrade coming, and the wisdom that comes with that. So do you have any little thing about like, let's talk a little bit about the brain health here and a little bit more into the brain stuff, because that's really fascinating. What kind of changes are happening there?
So remember that when you're in the normal menstrual cycle that goes up and down every month, right? In the first 2 weeks of day one of the cycle, we call is the day one of bleeding. So day one of bleeding is that first day in the first week of the menstrual cycle, as the estrogen is starting to go up. The second week of your periods, when the estrogen goes very, very high in your normal cycle, and then boom, ovulation happens, right? And your progesterone starts to turn on after ovulation. So the three and four have the increase in progesterone. So those are the waves, and they are changing all these receptors in all the parts of your body, but massively changing the receptors for progesterone and estrogen in your brain as it goes up and down. And it's like kind of these waves flowing in and flowing out. And you're getting 25% changes in certain, like, connections in parts of your brain during different parts of the month. which is, it's surprising, and we know that. And a lot of those are happening in your memory and your thinking centers, but also the emotional centers of your brain. So that last day or two before you start your period, in my clinic we call it the crying over dog food commercials
Yeah.
slide, where you could cry at the drop of a hat. Or you can get irritable, or you can like shout, or you're not your usual self, whatever that is. You're just different than your usual self. So that little part that we call PMS or PMDD that happens for a lot of us is what happens during the transition a lot, right? Because you never can determine exactly what part of the hormone cycle that you're on. It could be high or low that day. It becomes very erratic. It becomes like the choreography between your pituitary and your ovaries gets all messed up during that stage. So I say it's kind of the erratic rock and roll of the perimenopause, of the transition. So that's what's really happening in our brain during that time. So you could be sometimes more emotional, and sometimes you can be less energetic. Sometimes you can feel like a complete slug. You want to be a couch potato. And other times you can feel quite revved up and irritable. So that's the stuff that's going on for the hormone waves of estrogen, progesterone in your brain during that time. And of course, your testosterone is also fluctuating with that, as you know. And a lot of women completely lose their libido, or most of it, during the transition stage. 90% of your testosterone is made by your ovaries during your fertile years, and then during your post-fertile years, the 90% is made by your adrenal glands. So it's quite, you're being pushed and pulled quite a lot during that period of time, in your brain, in your mood, in your libido. And then, of course, there's the sleep. Shall we talk about
Let's
sleep?
talk about
Well,
sleep. Yeah.
okay. Just because it's so important for the brain. And I think that if you've read that part of the book, it's such a cool thing. I think it's a really nice visual to have, right, about what the sleep is doing in your brain. And during the day, we're going around, bouncing around, multitasking, and it's actually laying lots of deposits and garbage down in your brain all day, as the byproducts, as the garbage that comes from all these connections that are going on. And so then what happens at night when you sleep is that all of the little brain cells kind of shrink actually back, and let these big rivers and streams start to flow in between them that flush out all the garbage at night. So you'll be, quote unquote, you'll be refreshed when you wake up. I think that's one of the reasons we say, did you have a refreshing night's sleep? It means basically that someone came and hosed out all the garbage between your brain cells. So that's one of the things that's so important for the sleep to happen for us. And then, but when you're having these fluctuations, remember what happens in the brain because of the change in our estrogen and the hot flash, and why it's happening that you feel so hot and start to sweat. So the example is, if you are in your 30s and the temperature in the room increases by 10 degrees, goes 10 degrees hotter than it is, you might feel hot, right? You might feel to sweat a little bit. Everybody else in the room is probably hot and sweating too, right? So somebody will do something. But so that 10 degrees temperature, right? That 10 degrees temperature up makes you feel hot. What happens though is, as the estrogen drops, the female brain starts to feel 1 degree of change, as all of a sudden like it was 10 degrees. You see what I mean? So it's like if the temperature goes up 1 degrees, you're feeling hot and sweating, but nobody else is,
Yeah.
You need your fan. You need to open you need to take off a few layers, all
Yeah.
that, and in the bed, you need to kick off all the sheets. So the change of what's called the thermonuclear zone, or the thermostat in your brain, gets changed during those years in the transition. That's one of the reasons women can't sleep, is because they get so very, very, very uncomfortable, hot, sweating, and sometimes that increase right before a hot flash, you can have this horrible feeling of anxiety and stuff too. So those things are changing your brain during the transition. The good news is you won't have that after you've come into the upgrade.
Well, that sounds great. And so you'll be feeling more refreshed with your sleeping, hopefully. And
Most women are, yes. I mean, so I gave you a lot of tips I gave you all of the tips about how to get better sleep, and how to, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that we can change our habits and change our nutritional habits. And I think you've probably been watching all the research that's come out in the last month or two about how much alcohol affects the
Mm.
female brain in a very deleterious way, and just even a small amount. So I know I kind of naturally I stopped. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I just stopped. I didn't want that glass of wine because it made me feel. I just felt so crappy after it,
Mm.
and then if I had it too close to sleep, it would make me wake up, because alcohol does that. If you take it too close to sleep, it'll make you wake up 2 or 3 hours after you fall asleep, and then you can't go back to sleep.
Yeah, and you have that terrible sleep, and it's we're doing that here. We're not that we ever really drank very much anyway, but we're doing 1 year without any alcohol in the house, which is so
Oh,
good.
brilliant. That's actually
Yeah.
brilliant. That's a really brilliant, brilliant, brilliant,
Yeah, and sleep has definitely improved because like you say, even if I had one glass of wine out with friends, it would be still that night I'd be up, a few times during the night when you normally wouldn't be. And sleep is so important, like you say. And if you miss it, you definitely notice
Well,
it.
the garbage doesn't get taken out of your brain,
Yeah.
and then that's when you get the brain fog, and it all gets stuck, and the brain fog kind of comes and really makes you feel incredibly crappy.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's a mess. Anyway, so those are just a few of the things I go into, and the reasons. I mean, you've probably read some of that yourself already in the book, and there's lots more, but that is a kind of like a thin thumbnail
Yeah.
sketch.
Well, I'm really devouring the book very slowly because there's so much great information in there, and I didn't want to rush through it all. So it's definitely something that I'm going to be reading each night as well. Um, so we got a couple of articles because we like to look at some of the articles that are around. This article, we've already talked about some of the reasons to look forward to coming into the upgrade. There's a couple here that we might just look at the articles suggesting. It's got some common ones. So you don't have your period anymore, no more PMS. So we've been talking about some of those ones. It's some people don't end up that have hormonal headaches no longer have those. But some of the ones on here, it says it's also a chance to take stock. You can have greater self-assurance. It's a time to take risks in your life and focus on caring for yourself. So I was just thinking about that. Like we mentioned before, finding, during the transition, finding, what works best for you during that time to empower you. But what about now that we're in the upgrade, so we've moved over into that phase, how can we, take a look at some of these things the article's suggesting here?
Well, I think that, as you know from a lot of your people, that like some of the things the articles are suggesting in terms of, just techniques that people can use, like getting the cold pillow, or having your fan, or taking your, putting on the fan, or opening the windows, or having they now have special cooling mattresses or cooling mattress pads, or you can put the half pad on your side of the bed, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if have you found any of those things useful?
Well, I'm not really getting any heat at the moment, so I haven't needed to need to use those ones. But the article is suggesting a rechargeable thermal bracelet, which I thought was interesting. So um, it gives you a little relief from hot flashes to improve your sleep. So it just gives you a blast of icy coolness that tricks your brain from your wrist to your
Oh,
brain.
how
But
clever. How clever. It might be a lot cheaper just to hold an ice cube in your hand. Or to pull out one of those little, like a little, some pad with some ice in it. But
Yeah.
it does trick your brain. The cold will trick your brain. It tricks your brain for pain center. Remember, pain center, and for the heat
Yeah.
center. So cold will do that. Cold is a blessing for us all when we have all
I
kinds of things.
I remember my mum when she was going through it. She had like a little scarf that had ice, the ice in it. You put that in the freezer and then you wear it around your neck. That she found that
Oh,
really helpful.
brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant. I love it. That's great.
um, and yeah, they're suggesting like a cooling spray even. So that I guess that blast. I'd like a little bit of rose water or something nice like that. And kind of
Oh
spritz it on the
yeah, if
face.
you have
Yeah.
like a scent that you like. So I think
Yeah.
some women also in the transition get a little sensitive to smells, or to scents and things. But finding something that you kind of like, and also makes you just feel calm and cool. I love the spritzers though. I think the spritzers are great. The other trick is when you're really feeling hot. If you're not out in the, you can just go in the shower, let your hair get wet, right? Let your hair get completely wet, and don't dry it.
Yeah.
Just squeeze it dry just a little bit, and then you'll be, for the next 2 hours, while it's kind of like naturally dry, you'll feel all this nice coolness around your neck and on top of your head because of the hair.
Yeah, that sounds great. What about, during the transition phase, women can tend to put on weight gain. We've got a little article here on that as well. And usually that belly fat that comes with that. And that's due to estrogen levels plummeting, which reduces their ability to burn fat and burn muscle. You've got some really great tips in the book around exercise. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, and maybe some things to do to prevent or maybe mitigate some of the issues that can happen with the weight gain?
Exactly, because it's that belly fat right around the center that causes more cardiac disease and more inflammation. So I talk some about the inflammatory things that are not, now remember, it's called sterile inflammation. It's not the inflammation that you think of as caused by infection at all. It's just that because things like belly fat or things that kind of leak into your bowel, those kinds of things can cause more inflammation in your bloodstream. So keeping the belly fat down is a good way to decrease your inflammation and increase your brain health. It's interesting that we call it estrogen here. I know you call it estrogen there, but whatever you call it, it's really important. It's if there's any way that you are able to take HT or HRT, it will really help you keep the belly fat down better. And it also is one of the things that can help prevent prediabetes and diabetes. I know that you've probably read all of those papers, but I discussed that also in the book, that it's really brilliant for helping you, basically, if you're someone who tends to having either osteoporosis in your family, or someone who has Alzheimer's in your family, or someone who gets a lot of the cardiovascular with the belly fat and diabetes. It can actually, it's quite brilliant at helping reduce and prevent some of those. So I think we're going back now in medical profession. We're kind of like creeping back to realizing that for the last 20 years we haven't looked at all the advantages of the estrogen. So that if you're in those certain categories, you should think clearly with your healthcare team, whoever that is, and think carefully about your own risk factors in your family, in the genetics in your family, et cetera, et cetera. Please think about those and talk about whether or not HRT is something that might be helpful for you for a while.
Definitely. And then, so just some of the other pillars we'll just touch on. So in regards to exercise, I read a lot of stuff like for the transition phase, it's got to be like, should be lifting weights and, like doing a lot of weight bearing exercise and things like that. What kind of things do you recommend?
Oh, indeed, that's really important. So I like to give people one specific idea that sticks in my mind, because it's a very great research study on women in their 80s and their cognitive function. So those women in their 80s that had the best cognitive function also had the most leg strength in their muscles. So to me, that tells a big part of the story, right? Whatever you have to do to keep your muscles strong is going to keep your brain strong. And we know that there are actually factors that are released from the muscles, as you strengthen them, factors that are released into the blood that travel to the brain, that come from the muscles, that stimulate the brain. So we know what some of them are called. They have a lot of fancy names and that kind of stuff, and none of them have been nailed down for sure. But we know for sure that in your 80s, if you want to have strong cognition, you've got to have strong legs as well. So ladies, start your engines, get those legs moving, either walk or whatever it takes to get some of your muscles stronger. So that's my motivation when I want to either lift the weights. I mean, I have a little routine I do in the morning. I have a little arm weights. I lay on the back of and I do my bicycling. I do my butt squeezes. The butt, you probably saw the butt. So butt squeezes. I try to do as many as I can during the day when you're sitting or you're standing somewhere, because the butt squeezes include your glute muscles, and that also will stimulate the brain to increase brain power. So there's all kinds of things. Just put them into your routine, just like brushing your teeth. I stand there and when I'm doing the toothbrush at the end of the day, I'll try to get in a bunch of butt squeezes, because I need to have something that correlates with something else that I do. I can't just all of a sudden start doing all this good stuff for me, because I'll only do it for like a week or two and then I'll forget about it.
Yeah. So you're like habit stacking. You're like, when you brush your teeth, you're stacking the habit on there to clench the butt as well.
Exactly.
I love that. I'm a yoga and Pilates teacher as well. So Pilates, I find so, yeah. And a really big thing that I love to do with my clients is like just finding that stability in the feet, because a lot of people don't use their feet as much anymore. So that's where walking and strengthening the legs is so important, but also like the toes and the foot itself, and stretching the toes out so that they have that strong foundation, because a lot of people have falls in their older life because they don't have that stability or that strength there. Yeah. Yeah.
I tripped and fell last week. It's like, I
Oh
thought like,
no.
oh, but just like, it was like, there was this mat in the back of the yard. I just
Yeah.
like, I just caught my toe in it and I went flying. So yes, it's really important to be as strong as you can. Otherwise your bones too, because
Yeah.
now I must admit, I mean, I had a hysterectomy when I was in my, like about 53, because I had huge fibroids and it was pushing on my bladder and stuff. And so I've been able to take the estrogen ever since then. And so I ended up having bone density that's like over the normal for me. So my age group, which is really nice. And I realize it's because I'm a sort of a thin white woman, and I'm the type that should have really thin bones, but mine are really strong. I think because of the estrogen patch I've been taking for all these years.
Right. Well, that's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So nutrition wise, like on the podcast, we talk about bio individual, finding what works best for you, but then in terms of that, there's we don't advocate for the standard American or standard Australian diet on the podcast, but I did notice that prioritizing proteins quite important once you're going through to the upgrade. So did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. So it ties right into that muscle thing we're talking about, because the food for muscles is protein, and that's just what they eat. So so if you want to have strong muscles, you have to eat protein. And I really say that, I don't be a complete perfectionist about it, but think of trying to hit the 100-gram a day level. And I know that for me, I'm trying to eat a healthy Mediterranean diet with some healthy fats. And I get my calorie level a little too high, and within a month I'm like, I'm all of a sudden getting the spare tire around my waist again. So it's you have to do it in moderation, but the protein. So just think about trying to see what 100 grams of protein a day would look like for you, because if you can think that you need more protein now than you needed when you're younger, because your muscles will just deteriorate naturally unless you use them and feed them. So use them and feed them. The protein is really key. And then, of course, I go for, whatever diet you want to use. I did myself keto for about a year and a half.
All right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, my LDL, my bad cholesterol, went up like about 50 points. And so that was, my doctor says, like, oh boy, this is not good. So you had to modify. But I did learn to go back to eating like healthy fats. So I started just eating the healthy fats. I went back to eating more proteins and trying to eat a lot of vegetables and fruits in the kind of Mediterranean range of things. So if you're living somewhere where you get a lot of fish, it's just great. You can have a lot of protein.
Yeah, definitely. We love nutrient density over any foods. That's what we talk a lot about here on the podcast. So definitely prioritizing those foods that are the beautiful, healthy, natural fats with full of nutrient density, and the healthy proteins and things like that. So that's great. And also there's a little bit about fasting. Am I correct in did you talk a little bit?
There's this idea of intermittent fasting, which has been all the rage for a while, and I did it myself for a couple of years, and I've kind of learned that, I'm better off. So one of the ideas, the concept is that you want to let your whole GI system and your whole system rest, and letting it rest for 12 hours, which is mostly like if you eat at 7 p.m. at night and you don't eat till 7 in the morning, that's a pretty easy thing to do. I was kind of trying to do more like in the 14-hour of not, so it's because you can kind of trigger you can try to trigger your system to kind of reset itself. So the idea is to not stress yourself too much, but just a little bit in that direction, is having that's why it's called intermittent fasting, is that you maybe go for 12, 13, 14 hours with nothing, and then you eat all the rest of your food in the other hours. I don't know what you guys say on your podcast about that, but it really can be something that also I think it helps us keep our calorie level down a little bit. It just helps me maintain my weight a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely are not opposed to fasting if it works for the person, and especially I think where I can see it being really good in terms of the upgrade is that like maybe cutting the meals down to 2 meals a day, because you don't really need all that extra food, like you're kind of saying, and you might not be needing as much, I suppose, in that way. And just even by having that, like, don't eat anything after dinner and pushing breakfast out to be a little bit later, you're having more of a brunch and a dinner meal, that tends to suit a lot more people as they age.
Absolutely. I kind of, and then and it's kind of like if you eat more of your main meal in the middle of the day too,
Yeah.
you're not going to bed with a big chunk of food in your stomach too. So I think that's
Yeah.
also it helps you with your sleep too. So
Which is sleep. Yeah.
it's a win-win. It's a
Yeah.
win-win to do it that way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've talked about so many good things in the book. I think, like, if this has definitely sparked a lot of our listeners' interest, definitely go and look for The Upgrade in your bookstore and online on the online stores. I'm sure we can get it from all those usual ones where you can get it from. But yeah, if you want to go back and like delve a little bit more into hormones and exercise and sleep and mindset and brain health, this book has all of that. It's called The Upgrade, How the Female Brain Gets Stronger and Better in Midlife and Beyond. It's out now. Dr. Louann, it's been so great talking to you. I love the book, and I've just found this whole conversation so interesting. Is there anything you'd like to say to women that are listening in to kind of wrap up the conversation?
I just really hope for them to be able to have, as they go through this transition into the upgrade, to have more and more joy in their life and more serenity. That's what helps us be our best and to be able to be our kindest, best selves that we're capable of being. So anyway, so that's the goal I set for myself, and I just love all your listeners to feel hopeful about going through these transitions into becoming their best self.
Oh, I love that. When you said that, I really felt that. So it's such a lovely thing, joy and serenity coming up to during the transition and upgrade. I think that so many women will be so thankful for hearing that, reading your book. We'll link up everything into the show notes for you so they can everyone can go back and find those. Thank you so much, Dr. Louann Brizendine, for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
And that's the end of today's episode. Our theme music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everybody.